Let's add some CSS style to our web page now. First, we're going to do a global style to the body tag that it's going to affect the whole page. We're going to make the background gray. We're going to make the text a dark gray instead of black. And we're going to set some of the font properties. We're going to set it to a sans serif font. Right now you can see it's a serif font. Serif fonts are not good for especially small electronic devices like mobile devices like smartphones. But in general, it's better to use sans serif fonts on most any and all text for electronic devices. So let's go into our web page, and we're going to be doing our styles, remember, on the same page where our content and design is. We're not using an external style sheet because this is a unique page. It's different from all the other ones on the site, so there's no real reason to try and do this on the external style sheet because it only applies to this page. So let's use the body tag selector, and let's set our background on our page to gray, so background. We're using hex for this, so it's going to be ED, ED, ED. Let's set our font color to a darker gray, which is 404040. So we're going to color. Give it a space, put a hashtag in. 404040. And let's look at that before we move on. All right, this worked out fine. We have a background color of gray, and we have a text color that's not a full black, because you can see that this is a full black logo right here, and this text color is not full black. So let's go in and set it to some sans serif fonts and a base font size. So after this, in the same body rule, we're going to do a new declaration. And we're going to say font, and we're going to kind of do a shorthand for this. So we're going to say 13 pixels for the font size, put a forward slash, and we're going to put 1.6 for the line height. That's the leading. That's the vertical space between lines of text stacked on top of each other in paragraphs. After that, we're going to define the font family. We're going to choose Arial for the first one. If they don't have that one, we're going to put Helvetica as the fallback font. And if they don't have either of those installed on the computer, we're going to use a generic sans serif. Let's save that and give it a look. Great. Our font height spaced out a little bit. We have a nice Arial font, and it's about 13 pixels in size for our base font. Notice that our navigation has not styled as far as colors yet. We have to do that separately later in CSS. So now let's start working with the whole banner area. Let's start playing with that so you can see what's going on with that. So remember, in our code, we defined that banner area with a div, which is a container with a custom class of banner-wrapper. So we're going to use the banner-wrapper class name to start adding style to everything inside that banner area. So we'll write a new rule after the body rule. Come down here, and for a custom class, use a dot to define custom class, and then use the name of the custom class, and that's banner-wrapper. Give it a space, put your curly braces in. First thing let's do is let's set the font color inside of here. We're going to use a different background color, so let's go ahead and make all the type inside the banner white. So we'll go color, hashtag in 6 Fs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's set the background color so we can kind of define the area that the banner is going to take up. So background. And we're going to go in hex color with hashtag. And we're 0066 A5. Let's save that and see what we get. All right, so there's our banner area, and there's our body text in white. Notice that we still need to go back and still work with our links eventually. So it's starting to come around. Let's add our background image into this. We're going to add a nice grayscale image into this, and that's going to go in the background so that our text will be on top of it and still be able to be seen. So we're going to write another background declaration. It's important you put this declaration under the first background declaration, because remember, in the cascade of cascading style sheets, the one on the bottom will always take command. So if there has to be one that's controlling what's going on, the lower one's going to take control, and that's where we want to put the image. So let's go in and define the background image by using URL. Put your parentheses. Now we have to tell it to go to the images folder, / and the name of the image, and that's going to be textile 1600. I put the width of images in there sometimes when I name images, because that way when I have lots of things going on a page, I can define which image it is pretty rapidly. And I believe it's a JPG. Then after the parenthesis before the semicolon, I don't want it to tile on larger monitors, so I'm going to put no dash repeat. Give it a space, and I want it to center horizontally. And I want it to align to the top. All right, let's see what we get. All right, so there's my grayscale image. It's sitting there fairly nice looking. We have to actually add some blue tint on top of this eventually. But right now we can see that I do have a grayscale. We have white text, and we have our other header content. So let's play with what's going on this background image a little bit to make it look better. Going back to my CSS on my text editor. And under that second background declaration, I'm going to go and say background-size cover, so it displays and covers up all the area the way I need it to. Also, we can't see it do it right now because we don't have enough content on the page to scroll, but I'm also going to go in and do a background attachment fix, so I get that really cool parallax scrolling effect when I scroll the page. We'll look at that later when we have more content, but let's go ahead and set that up. So go background dash attachment colon and fixed. See, what else do I want to play with on this? I want to align the text to the center so it spaces out better. So let's go text dash align space center. All right, let's save that and just check our work before we move on. All right, so the text has aligned center. Our image is displayed nicely. Let me check it. That's working fine. So let's put a border at the top and the bottom of this banner just to set it apart a little bit better. So let's go back into the CSS. After the text aligns center, we're going to go border dash top. Remember, this is from the box model. All the containers have a top, bottom, a left, and a right border that we can have. So I'm going to make it 4 pixels in width, Style is going to be solid. And the color, we'll put in hashtag 063456. And let's look at that before we move on. So you can see this kind of dark black border up here. Let's add that to the bottom just to balance our design. The easiest way to do that is copy this line from this declaration, keep it inside the banner dash wrapper rule, paste it and change the border top on the second one to border bottom. Let's save that and just test it. All right, so there's our border down there. Let's look at our final finished version to see what we have going on. So you notice our H1 isn't big yet. That's all right, but you do notice that this is blue. So let's go in here and actually work on making this a transparent blue, because you notice that it's a blue tint, but we can see the background image through it. So let's go back to our code and go back into our second background declaration where we have the URL. And before that, we're going to add a linear gradient. A gradient, remember, is where it shifts from one color to the next. So I'm going to get right in here on the second background and go linear dash gradient. After you have that there, we're going to start working with some parentheses. So we're going to do a gradient from top to bottom. So put your parentheses in. First thing I'm going to say is to bottom. Put a comma in there. Now the color format we're going to use, we're not going to use hex because we need to see through this. We need some transparency in the color fill. And hex doesn't have that, but we're going to work with a format called RGBA, red, green, blue, and alpha. The alpha stands for the transparency. That's why we're going to use this color format, so we can see our background image through the color tint, which will be a gradient. So we'll say use RGBA, go to another set of parentheses, and we're going to define our colors. We're going to have no red, which is a 0, comma. We're going to have 102 for the green, comma, and we're going to have a lot of blue, which is 165, comma. Give it a space. Now we're going to put the alpha in. I'm going to put 1.0 in. This is going to be completely opaque. We're not going to be able to see through this, but I'm doing this on purpose to show you how this works. So after that, come outside of this parenthesis and put a comma. Give it a space, and we're going to put our second RGBA color in, since we're going to go gradient from top to the bottom. So we'll go from the first one to the second one. So let's put in the format again, RGBA. Put in a second set of parentheses to put the color information inside of. 0 red, comma, 65 for the green, comma, mostly blue at 135, comma, give it a space, and let's put the alpha, which is the transparency, in, and we're going to 1.0, which means we will not be able to see through this. All right, so then after you have both of those parens, put a comma after that before you get to the URL. All right, let's save this and see what we get. All right, so there's the blue gradient. Now let's go back and change the alpha so we can actually see through it. So we're going to take the 1.0 and make it 70% opaque. That means it'll have 30% transparency. So we'll go 0.7. And we'll go to the second alpha and have 0.7 there so we can see through this color. And refresh. Now we can see our background. So we've started to style the banner. We've got most of the styling in there. We still have to work with the navigation to clean that up some.